Thank you. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Andy Fell and I'm the founder of a business called Gift 631. And within that, I have an events brand called What Winners Do. And as part of that, we get the opportunity to interact with some truly amazing people from a whole range of geographies, sectors, generations. And it's a real pleasure and a privilege today to be joined by Grant Hackett, Order of Australian Medal. And Grant is currently the CEO of Generation Life, which is a listed Australian business. It's an investment business that helps people find really tax efficient solutions, owned by the Ostock Group. I was pretty amazed at this, Hacky, doing a bit of research today. You've also got an executive MBA, first class honours, a diploma of business law, and a diploma of financial services, which is absolutely phenomenal in itself. Now, clearly, Grant is also a swimming Hall of Famer. He's the Australian swimming captain. He has multiple Olympic and world medals. He's a multiple Olympic and world champion. And for those that perhaps not familiar with Grant's particular disciplines, Grant's real expertise was in the long distance swims. So effectively the marathon of swimming. And I'm sure we're going to get into that a little bit in terms of the conversation. So an absolute champion in multiple walks of life, having transitioned incredibly successfully from the swimming pool to the business arena. So Grant, it's a real pleasure to welcome you to the Future You community. And I'd love to start by going back to the start. And I know in your early days, your brother actually had a major influence on the early part of your life. And maybe we can start there, and then you can just take us through the swimming career that was Grant Hackett.
Yeah, sure. No worries. Thank you, Andy. And thank you very much for the very kind words and introduction. For me, really, I guess the early years of life were all about what my brother did. So there's a big gap between my brother and I. So 6.5 years. And the reason that's the case is mum actually had cancer in between having us both. So I always call myself the miracle baby because of that. No one else actually believes it, but I run with that. And my brother was doing all sorts of sports, and he actually fell into swimming because he got beaten in a surf race by two girls and said he wanted to do some swimming lessons. So I was 4, he was 10. I followed him everywhere. Everything he did, I did. And I was swimming out in the public lanes, and my brother became state surf champion within 6 months. And then I was kind of following him, and he kind of progressed so quickly in the sport of both swimming and surf lifesaving here in Australia. And he ended up racing a guy by the name of Kieran Perkins, and they were big rivals growing up. And I was kind of always looking up to the both of them. And then Kieran went on to be a multiple Olympic gold medalist and world record holder. And my brother went off and did the surf life saving side of things. And for me, the real pivotal point, I guess, in my swimming career, because I was playing rugby league, I played that for 7 years. I was doing the surf life saving, the Ironman, and having a lot of success as a youngster in that, but also swimming. And then in 1993, Juan Antonio Samaranch read out Sydney, and we got the Olympics in 2000. And as a 13-year-old, I was sitting there thinking, wow, I could, go to the Olympics in my own backyard. Like, it was an incredible thing for such a small country to get that. And of course, we had 1956. But then when we got that, I thought to myself, I want to go to the Olympics. And it's really weird to say this out loud to people now, but as a 13-year-old, it was my first thought. I thought, yeah, I want to go to the Olympics, but I don't just want to go, I want to win. So, I put in place all of the pillars to win. And I did that just by default. I thought, well, what do the best do? And so I looked at Kieran Perkins, who was the Olympic champion from 1992 in my pet event, the 1500-meter freestyle. And I sort of thought, well, what did he do in not just the 1500, but the 200, the 400, the 800, the 1500? And I just wrote all those times down for 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17 years of age. And my goal was to either emulate or beat those times, because I thought this path has been, trod before. So I might as well just follow someone who's done it, but just do it a little bit better. And it was as simple as that. And it wasn't like Google was around to find all those times. As a 13-year-old, I had to go and research swimming magazines, buy swimming magazines, ask my parents to go get swimming magazines, and research all the different age group records to achieved. And from there on, that were kind of the stepping stones for me to get to the Olympics. And funnily enough, just from that simple goal setting, from the age of 13 to 16, I then became open world champion at 16. And for the next 10 or next 11 years, actually, I was undefeated from that age until 27. So it sort of put me in good stead.
Yeah, and then one of the things you've said there, Grant, is one of my mantras in my whole life has always been, study successful people, learn what they do, copy it, and then add your own 10% winning edge to make it yours and take you beyond, where they've taken it.
Mm.
But I want to come back and where does that mindset come from? So you talk about, I was 13 years old and I just decided that I wasn't only going to go to Sydney, I was going to win. So
Mm.
I'd love you to talk to us about how you build such incredible self-belief and confidence and mindset that you've had your ups and downs in and out of the pool. Where does
Mm.
this real powerhouse mindset come from?
It's a good question, because if I could pinpoint that to the exact notion of where that's all driven from, I think I'd probably just bottle that and try and recreate it in my kids or other people. So it's a very difficult thing to say this is it. I know a lot of factors that kind of drove it, and I know the sort of person I am, and I have that self-awareness. And I think for me, when I was young, so the self-belief, it came from naivety. So I just, thought, well, why not? I always loved winning, and I think I had a bit of a thirst for winning when I was younger, because I won at a lot of different sort of sports and events, and not everything came natural to me. Everyone goes, "Oh, you're 6'6" and must be easy being bigger than everybody else." And I was like, no, technically I wasn't that great. I really had to work hard at a lot of things. And so I think for me, I learned how to grind really early. Like, I learned how to be tough. My brother was so much faster. He was so much bigger. He was actually more talented than me. Like, my brother was always ripped. I was a fat little kid, if I'm being brutally honest. And so, like, he was like, there was no focus on me. There was no attention on me coming through. It was all on him. I mean, he nearly qualified for the Olympics when he was 17. So, in swimming, as well as doing the surf life saving stuff. So, I was 11 at the time. Who cares about the 11-year-old when the 17-year-old could go to the Olympics and still in high school? So for me, I think there's probably part of it wanting to be noticed, because there was a lot of attention on my brother, and that's not applied to my parents. My parents were amazing and supported us both equally throughout the years. But I think that's just the natural byproduct of having such a big age gap. So for me, I was always wanting to beat him and do the things that he was doing, because it seemed, like fun. But I don't know where I've always gotten that deep sense of self-belief from, even through those difficult personal times that I was going through my life on the back of a marriage breakdown and missing my children, and not having the personal growth or emotional understanding or self-awareness to be able to manage myself effectively through that, because you don't go through that every day, and you don't know what to expect, particularly when you're in a position that everyone thinks that you're super resilient and you've got it all sorted and you're this gladiator. I didn't realize asking for help was a good thing. So I actually developed, through all those formative years of sport, this gladiator-like approach, and I was very tough and I was very resilient. I could push through injury, I could push through illness. I won an Olympics in 2004 with a partially collapsed lung. So I knew how to do that. But then on the other side, because I pushed through all of that, I thought I could push through everything, but I couldn't. And I realized when I sat down with someone in personal growth, they said, "Oh, your problem's easy." And I was like, "Oh, come on, tell me. Well, what's the challenge here for me?" And they said, "Well, you actually lack the ability to be vulnerable." And it was kind of like one word that hit me so hard. And I was like, you're right. I white knuckle my way through anything. And that includes the emotional difficulty of divorce and loss and missing my kids, who mean, the world to me. And so for me, that feeling of being able to sort of let down my guard and actually talk through stuff, and gave me that personal development. But through all those formative years and difficult times, I always had a determination that I'll always get back to where I want to be, because I believe you can do that. And I don't know why I think like that, Andy. I just have as a kid. I did as an athlete. And I always thought, if you work hard enough and you keep persisting, you will eventually get your outcome if you don't give up. Like, it just invariably has to happen. And no matter how far I fell down, either in sport through those difficult periods where you're injured or you're sick or things aren't going your way, or in my personal life where, things were just a mess at one point, to be totally frank, I knew I could get back to where I wanted to be, because I was always willing to put in whatever it takes through the process of getting there. So I always knew I would give my all. I knew I was never entitled. I knew no one was not going to give me anything. So I think if I always had that willingness and my why was strong enough, I could put those two things together and I get my outcome. And I think probably that combination of things, just even talking out loud now, really put me in good stead to deliver what I guess I wanted for myself.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I remember you saying to me that you've got this mantra which you just mentioned, whatever it takes. And you also mentioned Michael Phelps, what matters now. And then when my business was hitting a really challenging period through the early parts of COVID, I actually wrote those two expressions out on a big piece of A4 card and stuck it above my laptop here. I've got Grant Hackett's Whatever It Takes, and I've got Michael Phelps' What Matters Now. And then I
Mm.
added my own 10%, and I just put what matters most. And they were
Yeah.
just two mantras that I took from you and listening to you talking about Michael that absolutely carried me through.
Mm.
So I just want to kind of jump a little bit to the business world, and we may well
Yeah.
come back and revisit swimming for a minute. So, phenomenally
And,
successful.
and I'd love you to ask me about Michael too, because I've learned a lot off him as well in terms of goal setting. So we should circle back around to that.
Well, let's go there now. Let's go there now to make sure we do. So, Grant, what have you learned from Michael?
So what's really interesting is, you think you set big goals, and we were just talking about my sense of self-belief and what I wanted to achieve and be an Olympic gold medalist, right? That was my goal. Like I just said to you, I want to go to Olympics, but I just don't want to go. I want to win. And it's really funny. I know Michael exceptionally well. I've lived with him for a year, and with his family and all that sort of stuff. I'm very close to him. And I looked at him, and he had a different goal. It wasn't about one gold medal. He had to beat Mark Spitz and get 8. And so when he went to 2004 Olympic Games, that was his goal. And he got 6 Olympic gold medals and 2 bronze. Like, to anybody else, like that level of success, like no one else has done that except for Mark Spitz, right? So he got the 7. He's almost equaled Usain Bolt and Carl Lewis at one Olympics as a 19-year-old, I think he was at the time. And it's really bizarre because he went away from that feeling like a failure, because that wasn't his definition of success, that his goal was not met. Because, really, once you've reached that sort of height, how do you motivate yourself for the next 4 years to go there and then go one step further than that? But because his personal goal wasn't met, he was a failure. And he was depressed about that. And so that's why he went away and worked for 4 years. And then for 539 days straight, he trained into the Beijing Olympics. Like, when I say straight, I mean no Sundays off. So his will, his desire, his why was so strong, and his disappointment from not, getting that outcome was so great that it trained him into Beijing to do what he did. And he won one of those races by, I think, 1/100th, the 100-meter butterfly. And it was funny. I remember sitting at his house. This was back in 2017, and we were having a conversation because he finally had all these medals together because he had to do this Sports Illustrated front cover holding them all. And we were sitting there and we were calculating how many medals he could have either been on the side of gold or silver. And I think it was like 6 or 7 of them. Like, there was an accumulation of less than a second that if he was on the wrong side of that, those 6 would have been silver. It might even be more. It might even be 7. And it's like, it's not a fluke that he was always on the right side of that. That was preparation, desire, the why, the execution was so good that he was prepared to do that. And the other person probably wasn't. But it's quite incredible when you talk about goals and self-belief. That was a guy I was like, oh my God, why didn't I think of like 5 at least at one Olympics? I won multiple medals at Olympics, not always gold, but you know what I mean? It made me question the integrity around my goal setting wasn't good enough to be an Olympic gold medalist, because then I looked up at him and what he did and saw his process. So no matter what you're doing, you think you're going well, there's always someone who's trying to, climb. There's a higher mountain through the clouds that you haven't seen yet, and someone else is doing it and can do it.
Yeah, and one of my coaches way back in the day in the UK used to say to me, the summit's not the highest point. To your point, when you believe you've gone as far as you can and you've achieved your goal, there's always another one. There's always another one. And there needs to be, or else you're coming down, the other side, and everything else in life is a disappointment. So one of the things from that, Grant, is I know you've got a very, very clearly defined definition of success and equally definition of failure. And did that really come from those conversations with Michael? And maybe you could articulate what that meant to you in the pool, but equally how you've then carried that forward into the business world.
Yeah, it's really interesting because within sport, it is really clear, right? Like either win or lose. You either break a world record or you don't. You either make a national team and get to go to the Olympic Games or Commonwealth Games or whatever that goal you've set for yourself. So the definition for success and failure is really, really clear. And then you kind of set those goals and you have absolute clarity. So it's I don't find it difficult in sport. I always knew what I wanted. And it was interesting when I came into the business world, I found this really interesting transition, and we worked together at the same place. And what was interesting, I noted this was day two. This was the insight I had on day two. I realized that I come from a team of 41 athletes, the national team, 36 support staff on top of that, so 77 people, and every single person was trying to be the world's best at what they did. Whether it was backstroke, 100 meters, whether it was 800 meters women's freestyle, didn't matter. Whether it was the physio, they were all exceptional at what they did, hence the reason they were on that team. They were the elite. And then I walked into a big institution and I recognized very early on, as in day two, like I said, that, oh, wow, people don't think like that here. And then I was like, well, what are we trying to achieve? And everyone had different goals, even though they were working in the same business or same team. It was kind of, so I found all of this grayness that came into the world of business. And so I kind of embarked on my own sense of, okay, well, I can do one of two things here. I can either try and get as many people up to my thinking and clarity as I can, or I can come down into that and be one of those. And I definitely didn't want the latter. So I chose, the former to, go out there and actually define what success and failure looks like. Keep it really simple and provide absolute clarity. And I thought as soon as I got the opportunity within leadership positions, I was going to try and promote that kind of more objective thinking into the business. And look, when I look at the business that I run now, it's gone from a 15% market, and it's not all me by any means. I just provide frameworks as a CEO and structure and an environment for people to achieve in and recognize and reward within that environment. So, I have all those sorts of things sorted, but they're doing the work. But all I do is go, all right, this is the objective, this is the goal, this is the how, and this is the reward. And it's very, very simple. So we've gone from 15% to 52% market share. We've gone from $100 million worth of sales to already the 3 quarters into this year to $484 million worth of sales. So it's amazing just having a clear definition of success and failure, a great reward and recognition system, and providing clarity through all of that. And all of a sudden, people have an environment where they go, I know exactly what I'm doing, I know exactly where I'm going, and I know exactly what I get when I get there. So that seems to promote the right behavior. And you make sure, this is the hard part of all of that, you make sure that if you're going to be in a team environment of high performance in the critical areas of the business, you've got to know when to cut the dead wood, so to speak. I know that sounds brutal, and there is a brutal element to this, just like there is to any sort of success. If you're on a team and they're all 8s and 9s out of 10, and they're all pushing each other to be 10s out of 10 all the time, and then you accept a 4, what message does that send to the rest of the team? It actually says to all your 8s and 9s, you can be a 4 and you're still accepted on this team. And so you've got to make sure you've got the right people who sign up to that type of environment too. And you've got to make sure you make the tough decisions along the way. Just like in sport, you've got to make some really hard calls of what you're going to give up in life in order to be that successful. So, yeah, so I think a lot of that kind of thinking in sport, I tried to apply it. And it's really funny, Andy. I didn't try to apply it for everyone would think, oh, you must have applied it when you were the Olympic gold medalist. It's really weird. When I went into working in a big insto, I actually started applying my thinking of a 13-year-old. I went, what did I do then when I was super hungry? No one knew who I was. No one cared about me. And I just applied like effort and clarity and simple thinking. And that's actually what I constantly went back to, like that mindset all the time.
Yeah, and I'm a massive believer in clarity, consistency, simplicity. And as Jason Yetton used to say to us both, make the complex simple and the simple compelling. But
Yeah.
I fundamentally agree with that. If there's one word I would love to bring to individuals, teams, and businesses that I work with, this is 2 words: absolute clarity.
Yeah.
you
Yep.
know, and that's everything from clarity of vision, clarity of goal, clarity of role and responsibility, clarity of objective, clarity of behavior, and as you say, clarity around what's expected. So I think
Yep.
that's you've hit on so many hot buttons there: clarity, simplicity, structure, environment, and I absolutely fundamentally agree. If you accept the four, you're setting a tone for the rest of the business. And when I first worked with you, I'd done 2 years with that particular institution based out of Queensland, and having come from RBS National Westminster Bank in the UK, which was a fundamental sales and service machine. It was almost like stepping back 5 years when I was looking after Queensland, and it was a little bit too simple. It was a
Mm.
little bit too easy to be successful. And then I moved down to Sydney, which was when we worked together, and suddenly I had to be 20% better overnight because you were part of the team, but that's what you demanded because you set the
Yeah.
bar so high. So I had to be 20% better, but it also meant immediately everyone else who was going to be on that team equally had to be 20% better. And I think there's a massive message in that never let your standards to drop, but just by being the way that you are and role modeling what you expect, you can actually just bring others up on
And
the journey.
most, most people want to get up like that too. They just don't know how a lot of the time. And if they can be role modeled it, and sometimes you are a bit of an outlier. People will question you. People will challenge you, not always in good ways either, because you're a little bit different. And I just got comfortable with being uncomfortable about that. I was like, yeah, I am a bit different. I do think differently. I like to have fun through my success as well. So, I apply my personality to the role. I just don't sit there like a, plank of wood expecting people to do this, that, and the other and take my authority as CEO. I actually bring genuine care into the role too. I genuinely care about people upon that journey. And I think that's one of the reasons that I got captain of the swim team. And it was really weird. For the last 3 years of my career, there's this award that's given out at our annual awards night in the sport, and it's a black tie dinner, and I'd always get swimmer of the year. And I was like, I'd get up on the stage and I'd say, can you guys stop giving me this award? Because the swimmers vote for it. And I said, because I'm just doing my job as captain of the team. It should go to the person with the second highest votes, but to me, like you've got to do the role with that genuine care as well. And I think, I reflect on our success there. I mean, we can't name names, but, we had an external relationship party that was doing, I remember the exact number, 699 mil worth of upfronts in the first year. Within 2 years, we had that at 1.2 billion, and they've been stagnated for quite a few years. So it's amazing if you can just get a few, it's not many, but it's just a few things right, a few pieces in place. And like you said, the consistency of doing it every day is really important. I've even just completed this week my next year's, financial year strategy pack, and I've got a 3-year vision in there. I can't share any of this because of it's ASX listed, so I'll be giving disclosure away. But I have made the strategy so simple for the entire business. Like, it is so simple. It is literally like a couple of numbers, and hopefully we can revisit this call maybe in a month's time, and I'll take you through exactly what that was. Because I want to be able to go around to any part of our business across any state, and for someone to know exactly what the 3-year vision of the business is, because that's really important. So that'll get the alignment through the business that I would like to see, because COVID has, disrupted everybody through this period. So getting back to that alignment is really important right now.
Yeah, and there's multi facets to your life. You've still got some, engagements with sport and the media. You're obviously CEO of a fast growing, investment house. You've got your family life. What are some of the daily habits and routines that you practice to keep everything moving forward in the way that you want life to be moving forward?
First and foremost, like I'm a brutally honest person. Your home life has to be calm. So I went through a period where that wasn't the case, and it was destabilizing to every aspect of my life. So I have a wife who is amazing, like amazing support. And I figured, that relationship, obviously being the closest one to you, they can emotionally distress you, they can destabilize you to some extent. So I think having a calmness in your environment at home and supported is really important. So I really had that through my swimming career with my parents. And that gave me the opportunity to be successful there. So the environment you come from is really, really important to have that settled. So that actually stabilizes me really, really quickly. And it's funny because my wife, Charlene, she knows exactly what she signed up for. I'm full on. Let me give you an example of my last 2 weeks. So I've been doing the Australian Institute of Company Directors course. That was from 8 till 5:30 every day. And then I would have dinner. Then I would work till about 10:30. I'd get up, I'd go to the gym, and I had to do that for 5 days straight. I then, we had a bit of an easy weekend because then I had to go and work all day here, fly. I took the family to Adelaide. I was then working all day in Adelaide with my, CEO role. Then at night I was doing commentary. I was getting home at midnight. And I was waking up at 6:30. We got a 2-year-old, so he was waking up a little bit earlier sometimes. And then I would do that all day again. And I did that until Sunday night. Then Monday morning, I flew back on the first flight to Melbourne, worked all day, got home, 7 o'clock last night, woke up this morning, got on a plane, flew up to Sydney, did a bunch of presentations in Sydney, made sure I got back in time because I made this commitment to you to come on this a couple of months ago to do this. Then my computer software started downloading. And then, and I'm sitting here with you right now. And it's funny, I'll make sure in the morning that I go to the gym before I go to the office. So I think there's no avoidance. If you want to bite off more than you can chew, just start chewing and get on with it. But break it down into digestible bits. Like those last 2 weeks are kind of hell. And I knew they were going to be really tough because I had all this extracurricular stuff with my current role. And I didn't miss a beat on anything else that I was doing either, might I add. And I can confidently say that because I was really conscious of planning everything methodically to making sure I didn't miss one aspect of that execution. So I was really prepared for those couple of weeks. And I still did gym. I still worked out in there. I still did the things that matter to me mentally. 5 years ago, as an example, that's enhanced my life. I went to stop drinking for a year because I went through that really difficult divorce, and I just emotionally just wasn't connecting with me. And I thought, then after that, I might have a glass of wine with dinner. And it's really weird because I was like, I actually don't even feel like it now. So I make a lot of health conscious decisions to enhance what I want to achieve in life. So I haven't drunk in 5 years, like I said. So, that for me is a big thing. And I replace de-stressing with exercise and other things. Like I do a little bit of meditation when I need to. I will jump on and, my wife and I, like most people in this world, like watching a great series on Netflix together. It's a great time to, cut up on the couch and connect with that relationship. So there's a whole heap of little things that I constantly keep doing. And the only way to be able to execute a really busy schedule is to have really good, firm preparation around it and break it down day by day. Because if you look at your schedule in its totality when you're trying to achieve a lot, it will absolutely kill you and overwhelm you. Like next week, I go to Perth and Adelaide. Then the week after, I go to Sydney twice and Brisbane and the Gold Coast. So you look at that schedule of everything that I've got going on, and you would think there's no way you can do all that. But you find a way. You get on an airplane, you get through all your emails, you clear your inbox. You know what I mean? Like there's effective ways to being able to manage all of that, but don't think too far ahead or your head will explode. Will for me anyway.
Yeah, and I've had the privilege to interact with a serious numbers of high performers through my life, and I hear that consistently that go big but act small, so you don't suffer from the overwhelm. So
Yeah.
being willing to set, I call them SMUC goals, but Jim Collins, big, hairy, audacious goals. But
Yeah.
if you just stay at that level, as you say, you just get completely overwhelmed. So it is
Yeah.
absolutely about breaking it down into sub goals and milestones, and then breaking it down again into the, whatever next best actions, and
Yeah.
focusing on the action level. So, it's something I absolutely
You've got
recommend
to
to everyone.
hang on back to me on board because it's exactly it's funny, like a lot of the behaviors I do, but I don't know a lot of the theory like you do around it. I kind of just know by experience what works and what doesn't work, and I have that sort of high level of self-awareness because I know every time I start thinking too far ahead, I'm like, oh my God, like it can cause some form of paralysis almost, if you start to, overwhelm yourself like that, you go, oh, I'm just going to not do any of it. But if you just take those small steps, it's funny how, much you can absorb by doing it in those digestible bits.
Yeah, and just a couple of last questions from me, Grant, and then we'll just give people the opportunity We'll see if we can get one or two questions from the chat just to involve everyone else.
Yep.
How does Grant Hackett recover from something that hasn't gone as well? Because you set such a high bar, you've got incredibly high expectations of yourself. When you haven't quite lived up to those expectations, how do you recover quickly to get back into that ideal performance state? Say you've got a session with, I don't know, some investor relations sessions, or you've got a big town hall with your team, and you've just had a disappointing phone call or a disappointing meeting. How do you get back in to that ideal performance state?
So firstly, like I would recognize myself as a sensitive person. Like I feel things. And so when things don't go the way I want to, and I take a lot on board, and like you said, I've got some really big goals, I really feel it. Like I hurt, to be honest. Like I really hurt. And I let myself actually do that much easier now. And then all of a sudden I almost get to a point on those sorts of things. And I'm probably talking about bigger things than a bad phone call and all that sort of stuff. I just flick the switch. And then I stop feeling sorry for myself, and I go, what am I going to do about it? So, and I ask myself that question, and then I start doing, because I find for me, as soon as I start doing and put the momentum forward, I all of a sudden start forgetting about that, and I start doing something about it, and I start feeling good about it again. So for me, being action orientated on the back of disappointment is really, really important. But just as important as part of that process is actually feeling it and recognizing the sort of person I am. I'm not, people would always, I always get these sorts of comments because I don't know, I don't try and put on this facade, but I think when I just execute, I'm really focused. So perhaps it's why it comes across, is that, you should have been like SAS, or, you know what I mean? You should have done these sorts of, Navy SEAL type things. And one of my competitors did become a Navy SEAL. He got second to me at the Olympics. He ended up being chief and commander of SEAL Team 5, might I add. So maybe there is something in that, but it's really weird. I'm like, no, I actually get really disappointed. Like I get really shattered, really upset, but then I actually start to do something about it. And I learn not to feel sorry for myself for too long. And I think I've learned that process about myself, and I've learned how to execute that and get through it. And then when I start doing action orientated things, then I start getting over it and feeling better, and then getting to the results that I feel like I want. So it's all a process of not giving in, but it's not a matter of just like, you're not rubber. Like you don't just bounce back straight away from things. That's not the way human beings work. So I think for anybody on this call, don't think that, successful people, don't look at Roger Federer or Rafael Nadal in the court, or Michael Phelps, and don't think they don't get shattered by losses and bad training sessions and all this stuff. They just have a really good process of not staying there. And I think climbing out of that hole the way that suits you and not feeling sorry for yourself is a really important element of that. And for me, getting on with the little actions is what really draws me back to where I want to go.
Yeah, it's certainly something you learn when you're self-employed. you can't, you got to bounce out. You got to get out of that hole really, really quick.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of my biggest transitions, actually, from corporate to the world of being self-employed. My final question before we throw it open to everyone is, I want to take you back to the Sydney Olympics. So you're on the blocks just before the Olympic final. It's your home Olympics. You've been thinking about it since you were a 13-year-old kid. You're there to win it. What is going through your mind in the last few seconds before the race starts? How do you zone right in?
So it's really funny. Like I get less nervous when I get closer to the point of execution, because I find there's less things to focus on. There's less worries, less concerns. So warm-up's done, marshalling area's done. The days before the lead up, the media side of things, they're all done. They're all sort of behind you. So for me, once I get to the final moment of execution, I've already told myself all the stories and race execution. I have that mantra, whatever it takes, which I've had to use at Olympics in difficult times. But when I'm standing behind the block, I look down that black line and I'm like, game on. And I kind of get this little bit of like, I'm going to kick everybody's ass. Like I think that to myself, like, come on, you gotta have to beat me if you want this. So I feel a sense of hunger. And then when I step up on the blocks, when I hear the whistle, all I'm literally thinking about is a starter's gun. There's nothing else in my mind. It's really weird. I don't know how, because I feel like in day-to-day life, I think about a lot of things, and I'm quite an analytical person, but it's really weird. I get into that sort of moment. The only thing I'm thinking about is the starter gun, because I know that's all that matters right then and there. And so I think I've probably practiced that so many times, that race execution, that I just fall straight into that mode. So for me, I get clarity when I walk out behind the blocks. I say the things that I need to. And then when it comes to execution, I'm focusing on that specific point at that time of execution. I'm not thinking about the first lap even standing on the blocks. I'm thinking about the gun, and that is it. So yeah, so no one's actually ever asked me that before. So it's the first time I've answered that so specifically.
Brilliant, thank you. So we've got a question from Rachel. Are your kids as motivated as you were as a kid?
I don't think so. So they're all so different. So I've got twins from a first marriage, and I've got a 2-year-old from a second marriage. Um, I one is all talent and but just flippant, and then the other one is kind of like really willing to give anything a go. So I don't know. They're 12 years old, the twins. One's a boy, one's a girl, might I add. And so I see motivation at things that they love and they're really good at, but not necessarily in sport. And it's weird, because I think my 12-year-old boy is a really creative personality, where I wasn't like that as a kid. I was like really sport and really focused. So I've kind of got to go, okay, where's his why going to be? Because it's not going to be mine, and I can't apply mine. And I almost don't want to apply mine, because I don't want to get up to 4:45 every morning and take him swimming training. So that's not bad. So I've done all that. So for me, I'm kind of challenging, okay, maybe they are as motivated as me in some respects, but I've just got to understand their why a little bit more. And I'm starting to figure out as they get older. However, then I look at the 2-year-old, and he's wired a lot more like me. I can see that. He's got this look in his eyes that he gets. And even Charlene's like, oh my God, that's my wife. She's like, oh my God, he's like you. Like, he has this really strong will. And you don't want to discipline that out of him. Like, when he's naughty, we have boundaries and all those sorts of things. Don't get me wrong. But you can see he's got this real strong desire. You kind of, and I could be completely wrong, but it's funny, with everything that I've seen in kids or people that you notice, it's funny how many people hear you say, what they were like then is exactly what they're like now. And I kind of feel like when he applies himself, his will really does drive him. So I kind of see a little bit more of that in him, that personality style. But yeah, we'll just wait and see where he applies it again.
And I think certainly what Leona and I have worked exceptionally hard to do is to create an environment or a tone or a family culture which is just conducive to the kids, believing in opportunity, believing in possibility. So, people often ask me, are you some goal setting freako dad? Which is the last thing I am, but we just create an environment which is conducive to the kids wanting to have, a better sense of why and a sense of purpose and just believe in opportunity and possibility.
Yeah.
So a question from the great Barry Moore. You guys are both Melbourne based. Barry's the general manager of La Mazzocco, phenomenal organisation. Do you take regular breaks and just totally switch off? Must introduce you guys.
Yeah, so there's one thing that we haven't touched on as part of this conversation with that question. Thank you, Barry, has allowed me to do, is my weaknesses. So my weakness as an athlete was an inability to take breaks, rest when I needed to, do all those sorts of things that, are conducive to performance and aren't bludging and aren't taking your foot off the accelerator, where I thought they were at the time. So, I had Epstein-Barr syndrome at the Sydney Olympics. I had a partially collapsed lung due to overtraining and a chronic chest infection off the back of pneumonia coming into the 2004 Olympics. I was constantly training sick, not too injured. My body held up from an injury point of view pretty well. I only had the one shoulder surgery. A lot of people around me had multiple surgeries all the time, so I wasn't too bad like that. But I was always overtraining, over pushing myself. And it, it was my best and worst sort of characteristic, I guess, in many respects. But, after 2004, I got a gold medal, 2 silver medals, both by 0.1 of a second, the silver medals. Got fixed up, had 11 weeks off, really good break, got my lungs, and chest all back to normal. And then went into the 2005 World Championships, got, World Swimmer of the Year over Michael Phelps, won everything, broke world records of Ian Thorpe, like, because when I was getting a little bit sick or run down, I would talk to my coach, I'd have a session off. I'd take a break. So now, because I'm 42 years old, you think I mature a little bit more. I sometimes fall into that trap, but I try every 6 months to have a minimum of 2 weeks off in a row. And then every quarter, just have a little break, like maximize one of the, long weekends with a 1 or 2 days extra off and recharge myself. So, and I find as soon as I go longer than 6 months without a decent sort of a break, I start to feel tired. I'm not as enthusiastic, and it starts to weigh on me. That's really, really consistent. So, yeah, having a break and escaping is just as important as your persistence and fast-moving pace when that's required as well.
So, Grant, the final question is from Jen over the other side of the world in Scotland. Similar theme to Barry's, but I think many of us, this will be running through our minds having listened to you talk about your schedule over the last few weeks. With such a busy working life, how do you manage your energy levels through, say, a day or a week? What are your strategies to do that? Apart from obviously, you mentioned about hitting the gym hard.
Yeah. Well, exercise is a big thing. I find if I go more than 3 days without doing something, that always starts to weigh on me. And I like everybody, I wake up. I'm not an early morning person as much as everybody thinks I am because of my swimming career. I hate early mornings. But if I push myself to get up, I often feel a lot more energized throughout the course of the day. I often I put no appointments at certain points in my day in my diary just to re-energize. My little cheat side is my little coffee routine. I always have a coffee in the morning. Then post lunch, once you get that post lunch lag because you're digesting, I always have a coffee then, and that seems to kick me through the afternoon a little bit. So I'm pretty methodical about my behavioral patterns that I sort of deploy throughout the course of the day. But the other aspect too is I try and eat really healthy. So I try and eat the right sort of mix of foods. So I don't have sugary foods. I actually take from, I guess, my athletic days, having things like sweet potatoes or brown rice, things that give you sustained energy. So I try and mix, it's a mixture of exercise, diet, breaks through the day where you can actually recharge. Sometimes if I get too flat in the office, I will get up and I'll go for a walk around the block. People think they have to be a hero. You won't. Your quality of work just won't be there. So if I get to that point, which is I'm starting to dive and feel like that on the computer, I'll do that. And it's funny, you can come back. It gives you a couple more hours of decent work just doing those little things. So it's all those little disciplines that I sort of factor in every day that have now become habitual that seem to put me in good stead. And then, like I said, I'm really fortunate. My wife sees how hard I work, and she goes, I know what I signed up for. So she goes, I don't expect you to change, which is really nice because I can't. But then, on a Saturday morning, that's kind of my opportunity to sleep in a little bit. Then Sunday, I'll get up early with the kids and sort of help her out a little bit more too. So we have a plan around family as well to make sure that I have this sustainable working life and I do things day to day that work for me. And then, on weekends, I make sure when I can get my recovery, I'm supported here at home in doing so. I'm not made to feel guilty, which I know a lot of people can feel like that. And it's funny because I don't drink or anything, I don't have any of those issues where, you want to go out and do stuff, or you feel a little bit hungover from, having an extra couple of beers on a Friday night. So, as soon as it's kid time in the weekend, it's a sort of different sort of energy for me. And I love being fit and active with my kids as well. So that's just a really important value within our life. So, yeah. So all those little things through the day, you've just got to get disciplined at, and they turn into habits and you can't let them slip, as soon as and I do sometimes too, don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect, but then I bring it back on course and I'm like, yep, still works.
Brilliant. So Grant, this has been absolutely phenomenal. And, we've had numerous conversations over the year, and every single time we speak, I leave the conversation just full of energy, full of drive, full of passion, full of determination. I truly believe you're an outstanding human being in every sense. What you've achieved in Nepal, what you achieved through the early parts of your career, when your business career, when we worked together, what you continue to achieve, the business you're leading, the growth within that business, your family life and everything that's happening there. You're just an exceptional human being who inspire me every single time that we have the privilege to have a conversation. So I think it's about time we allowed you some time and space to go and reconnect with the family.
I'll leave you with one parting point though,
Brilliant.
because say, and thank you so much for the kind words. They mean a lot from coming from you, because, I looked up to you when I got into my business career, and I always learned something from our discussions as well. The one thing people ask, like, what's the art to sustain success? And I've developed that answer over time too, because I think to myself, because I get asked that question a bit from, my swimming career or coming into business now. And it's funny, the more successful I get, the more paranoid or dissatisfied in many respects I get. I actually, because, we've just had a share price growth of 100% over the last year. And, we've had CAGR growth within our NPAT of 59% for the last 3 years. So for me, everyone hears that as great things, and we've got a lot of good investor and shareholder support, but I'm like, yeah, but what could go wrong now? And so I start thinking like that, you know what I mean? So I think that complacency never sets in, and that's just a natural part of my mindset. But sort of a bit of a parting gift to everyone here: as soon as you have that success, don't think about, because I've found this, and even I've had these moments in my career, as soon as you start thinking you've got it made, it starts creating blind spots and blinkers. As soon as a little bit of arrogance kicks in, something will bite you on the ass. Trust me, it will bite you hard too. So I found just going, okay, like, yeah, that was great, we did that, but you know what? Something's got to go wrong, or a key person's got to leave, or you know what I mean? And so I think that sort of dissatisfied almost, or paranoid to a healthy extent. You don't want to get unhealthy about that stuff, but I do think like that as well. So I think that keeps you in good check and balance, and removes that issue around complacency, and putting the blinkers on, where if something's coming, you'll see it coming, instead of it sort of becoming a big surprise.
Yeah, live in a state of permanent dissatisfaction.
Yeah. And some people naturally do it, and some people have a one-hit wonder and then sort of let it get to their head. So, yeah, you've got to make some choices around that.
Yeah, 100% present in the moment. Absolutely agree. So, Grant, this has been a real privilege, a real pleasure, and thank you so much. And I'm already looking forward to that next conversation.
We'll have it in a few months' time. Look forward to it. And thanks for everyone's questions. I love trying to help people and seeing people be successful in their own careers. So good luck to everyone on the call too.
Brilliant. Take care. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers. Thanks, Andy.
Thanks. Bye.